What is good, YouTube? Warstu here with a video on Spider-Man Far From Home. So as you know, Sony Pictures and Columbia Pictures re-released Spider-Man Far From Home with 4 minutes of additional scenes to basically add in scenes that were taken out, scenes that didn't really make any sense. You know, we've seen most of these scenes during the trailers. You know the scene where Spider-Man has the Iron Spidey suit and he's taking down some villains in a restaurant. Bit insensitive after the death of Tony Stark, and that's pretty much the reason why we didn't really see him in an Iron Spidey suit. But what is interesting is the scene before that when Peter Parker is talking to Ned about taking down some mobsters. But if you look in the background, if you've got eagle eyes, you can see that Flash Thompson, the person that did become Venom in the comics, is right behind him in the background. And we're going to focus on Flash Thompson in this video. So what is good, YouTube? Warstu here. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe to never miss any of the videos. We are giving away a PS4 Pro with Spider-Man PS4 Game of the Year Edition because that game is so good, or an Xbox One X. When the channel hits 100,000 subscribers, all you gotta do is subscribe to the channel with notifications on and let me down below why should I pick you. And as of this Friday, we'll be giving away EndGame for a couple of weeks every Friday. Same rule applies. Subscribe to the channel and let me know down below why should I pick you. So Flash Thompson is a very Flash person. He's a very interesting character since we first seen him arrive in the MCU. So ever since Flash Thompson arrived in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, everyone thought they were going to be building up to Venom. But no one thought they could do this Venom storyline because we've already got the Tom Hardy, Eddie Brock variation of Venom in the Venomverse, the Sonyverse, the Spideyverse. But a lot of people seem to think that Flash Thompson will be becoming a much bigger character in Spider-Man 3. But Warstu, Spider-Man 3 is not going to take place in the MCU. This is irrelevant because if you've been following all the posts and everything, Tom Holland's actually gone on record to say it, that everything that's happened so far in the Spider-Man 1 and 2 will continue going forward into Spider-Man 3, including the death of Tony Stark, Iron Man. So everyone is going to be in Spider-Man 3. They're not going to recast the whole movie in Spider-Man 3 because that would make absolutely no sense. So they are definitely building up Flash Thompson to be a bigger character in this Spider-Man universe. So let's get into this video. So it is pretty interesting. So Flash Thompson throughout this whole movie is constantly live streaming his daily routines and acts like he's there to save the day all the time, but he's not really. But it seems like he's trying to connect with people via social media because he doesn't really have many friends in real life. Now, during a scene in the movie, he notes that Flash's father is very sick to the point where the bully is actually worried about him, that he isn't in contact with his family throughout the whole trip. It adds to the fact that maybe Flash Thompson is depressed. Flash's circumstances at the end of the trip when they return to Europe, nearly every kid is picked up by their parent, who are all eager to see them after the dangerous battle they had with the Elementals and Mysterio, whereas Flash Thompson is greeted by his family's driver. Flash innocently asks if his mother couldn't make it, only receives a nod. He looks very visibly upset. But the scene cuts away and the movie moves on before we could see anything else. Now, this is interesting because we've got to go back to the scene that they added in. We see Flash Thompson in the background of an opening scene putting some rubbish or putting something into a bag, and obviously Spider-Man's talking about having to take some mobsters out. Now, why would they add this scene in? It's almost like they are trying to add up little parts throughout the whole movie. We see him on the bus when Peter Parker's got the Edith technology. You can see he's texting his mother or someone in his family, and you can see there's no response. So it seems like Flash Thompson is very depressed in this kind of scenario. Now, it's been an ongoing theory in, I guess you could say, the Marvel universe, the Sony universe, for many years or many months really, that Flash Thompson's mother may have worked for Carlton Drake, aka the person that becomes who gets the symbiote. So he was leading the experiments on different Venom symbiote. We don't know the professions of Flash Thompson's parents, but we know they're wealthy. In Spider-Man Far From Home, Flash drives his father's Audi. Showing Thompson's parents have a connection to Carlton Drake would be an interesting connection to Spider-Man films and could essentially turn him into some variation of Venom. Because obviously in the comics, Flash Thompson does become Venom. There's not just a Brock variation of Venom, but it is clear that they are trying to make you think that something else is going on But could they have two different Venoms? Because we don't know with all this kind of Marvel, Sony, is he in, is he out? It doesn't really matter if he is in or if he isn't in or if he's out. Because realistically, Flash Thompson will become Venom at some point because they keep showing you these little things, then cutting it off. So it is very interesting. So in the comics, Flash became the new Venom when he was enlisted as part of Project Rebirth 2.0, where Flash was bonded with the symbiote recently acquired by the US government. Kind of a basic storyline. While bonded, Flash was able to reproduce his legs and had power comparable to Spider-Man. So it's a very similar storyline to how, I guess you say, Spider-Man becomes the Venom symbiote. So it is interesting. I'm not the only person to say this. I've been tagged in a couple of videos over the last couple of months about Flash Thompson becoming Venom, and it's just more and more evidence that they are trying to show you a little bit here and there to make you think that someday Flash Thompson will become Venom in the Marvel Universe. Now let's talk about the Spider-Man contract deal that everyone seems to be overhyping, because it doesn't really matter if he's not in the MCU, although I do want him in the MCU. If he isn't in the MCU, it's not the end of the world, because Spider-Man is still getting played by Tom Holland. And also, the storyline will still be canon. So whatever's happened in Spider-Man 1 and 2 will still be canon going forward. This is all to do with merchandise. Marvel will allow it because, obviously, if there's no connection, then Marvel cannot make money through Spider-Man merchandise. And yes, I've seen some very weird videos going around YouTube saying that Marvel's not going to be making Marvel Spider-Man merchandise or video games anymore. I think that's absolute. I don't really know where people will go in that, because Marvel makes over $1 billion a year in Spider-Man merchandise, so they will renegotiate this deal. This deal will go forward, whether it's the case that Tom Holland plays Spider-Man in the Venomverse, into Spideyverse, and as well as the MCU. It doesn't really make much difference because Spider-Man isn't going anywhere. So a lot of people are talking that the re-release of Spider-Man Far From Home didn't really make much money. It made globally just under 10 million, which is quite a lot, seeing this movie came out over 2 months ago. I mean, the main reason for re-releasing it is they wanted to hit the 400 million domestic kind of record for Spider-Man, and they wanted it to be the most successful domestically Spider-Man movie ever. I don't know, I haven't really looked at the numbers, but it must be close to that. But yeah, it did pretty good for a movie that's been out for 2 months, and the fact that everyone said we're going to boycott Spider-Man, well, hitting like $6 to $7 million in America tells me, and it tells the audience, that no one is boycotting Spider-Man. It's like everyone's saying, yeah, we're not going to watch Spider-Man ever again, but they're not going to go through with what they actually say, which is quite kind of funny. Because like, yeah, we're not going to watch Spider-Man. Most people went out to watch Spider-Man re-release. There wasn't really any point because, like I said, except for the initial scene of Flash Thompson doing something with something in his locker, some garbage. It's really hard to make out. You had to have eagle eye to see it. But I really do think they are trying to make you think he is going to turn into Venom at some point later down the road. He is the biggest Spider-Man fan ever at the moment. Spider-Man even follows him, watches him on Instagram. We find that out during Spider-Man Far From Home, which I think is very interesting. So I'd love to know if you guys actually think down below, is Flash Thompson going to become a bigger role in the movie, or will they turn him into maybe a Norman Osborn, Harry Osborn kind of character? Because that is something they really could do if they don't want to introduce Green Goblin or the Harry Osborn storyline ever again, having someone that was already there from Spider-Man Homecoming in the background, and he could potentially be a scapegoat, I guess you could say, for that kind of storyline. That would be pretty cool. But this is just a random theory. I mean, the scenes they added aren't really relevant. It's essentially the 10 steps that Peter Parker had to do before he went on holiday, obviously getting his passport and them kind of scenes. We do see some New York scenes, but it's called Far From Home. So I can see why they cut out a lot of these scenes, because most of these scenes are pretty irrelevant to the main narrative of the story. I mean, they are real deleted scenes that were made. They're not like the EndGame deleted scenes where you hear, yes, this living tribunal was in the movie, when realistically it was a script idea that was never used. That isn't really a deleted scene. A deleted scene is generally something they made, it was finished, and it just got cut from the final variation of the movie, not a deleted scene that was never made. That's just how some people would title stuff. So like always, guys, let me know down below, do you think Flash Thompson is going to become a Venom symbiote? Or is he going to become some kind of greater threat to Spider-Man down the road? Because we eventually know that Spider-Man will graduate, and eventually we will see like a 25-year-old version of Spider-Man. We hope, without them rebooting the Spider-Man universe once again. But it is pretty obvious to me, people with logical thinking sense that this whole Spider-Man, Sony, Disney deal, it's a marketing ploy, it's a publicity stunt, and at some point they will come out and be like, yeah, guys, got you, but they will never confirm that. We all know they're just playing on each other, they're pressing each other to get what they want at each other. At the end of the day, they are businesses. A lot of people don't think about it like in business sense. They think about it as it's the us against the fans. No, it's not. They're both businesses. They both want what's best for their business. Obviously, Spider-Man is owned by Sony in the movie rights, so Sony is the big boss really, regardless to who makes the movies. Sony funds them, they're the big boss. Like always, guys, let me know down below. Is Flash Thompson going to be Venom? Personally, I would love that. That would be pretty cool if they did turn it into a variation of Venom, which could be comic book true, or he could be Harry Osborn or a variation of that. An earlier plot leak that turned out to be fake did say there was going to be a new character introduced in Spider-Man Far From Home. At this time, it was Spider-Man Field Trip. Did imply that during Far From Home, there would be a character that would be new, and this character would turn out to be Harry Osborn later down the road. So maybe that got scrapped, maybe it was a lie, maybe that could be actually be talking about Flash Thompson. But I do think that's very interesting. But guys, don't worry, Spider-Man going forward, it will be based around whatever's happened in the Spider-Man universe so far, so they're not going to retcon anything. They can use all the same characters. I don't really get the confusion of people saying they can't use MJ, they can't use Flash, they can't use Ned. Yes, they can. They can. Because, yes, they are MCU characters, but they were all paid by Sony, so they are Sony characters still. So like always, guys, please like, subscribe, and comment. I'll catch you in another video very soon. Catch you later.